The Olympics begin this week in Paris. Paris joins London as the only cities to host the Summer Olympics three times. LA will join that list in 2028. The U.S. taking part in both the men's and women's soccer tournaments. We'll start with the men. It's the first time the U.S. men are playing in the Olympics since 2008, which was so long ago. Stu Holden and Maurice Edu were on that squad.
Jeez, my goodness.
This time around, the U.S. in a group with host France, New Zealand, and Guinea. They'll face those three teams in that order. The top two in the group advance to the quarterfinals. Reminder, the three overage players are Walker Zimmerman, Miles Robinson, and Georgi Mihailovic. Other notable names include Caleb Wiley, who signed with Chelsea today, Tanner Tessman, Gianluca Buzio, Jack McGlynn, Duncan Maguire, Kevin Paredes, Paxton Aronson, a pretty good squad. What's your outlook for this tournament?
Well, I think I a couple months ago told you about the fact that I wasn't excited about this because I didn't feel like we were going to look at it as a breeding ground for potential players that could matriculate up to the national team. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my experience with the Olympics from back in the 1900s at the end of the show here. But I will say this: I've come around a little bit. This is going to be on NBC, right? NBC does the Olympics, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So as you said, you come right out of the chute against France. That's going to be interesting to see. I think you certainly can beat the likes of New Zealand and Guinea. So there's 6 points right there. In the same way that we kind of looked at the U.S. men's national team in Copa America, where you should have gotten your two in Panama and Bolivia, gotten your 6 points, and then you took your chances against Uruguay. The same is here. You get your 6 points against New Zealand and Guinea, you go through, and whatever happens in that first game against France is just kind of gravy. However, you could start off something magical by coming right out of the chute, like I said, against the host nation, and by the way, not just any host nation, but France, and finding a way to get a result. So I am excited. I still don't, and again, as a reminder, clubs are not required to release players, and so this is the best that the U.S. could come up with, including the three overage players who were not going to participate, fully in Copa America going forward. So I still, if anybody comes out of this summer from a men's perspective and is a viable option going forward with the national team, I will consider it a success. Even one player. Not players that have already kind of been there already, but that emerges.
And we should note, France had a lot of issues with getting players released. Thierry Henry thought that maybe because he's Thierry Henry, he'd have better luck with that. It did not play out that way. Real Madrid didn't release anybody. Mbappe, Camavinga, Tchouaméni. Not here, PSG didn't release Barcola or Zaire Emery. Arsenal didn't even return his call, supposedly, about William Saliba. So it's obviously a talented French squad, but the names don't pop that much. Lacazette is there as an overage player, Michael Olise. And you mentioned, Thierry Henry is a name that people have brought up for the U.S. job. Even though great player, good pundit, there's scant evidence that he's a good coach. I am curious to see how this French team looks at these Olympics so we get a bit more of a feel of Thierry Henry as a coach.
But he's Thierry Henry. And look, we all bank and use what we have at our disposal. And if you're Thierry Henry, you're going to get a lot of doors opened, and you're going to be given a lot of the benefit of the doubt. But if Matt Crocker is truly looking for a serial winner, that's not the person to be looking at.
And listen, I know nothing about Guinea, so I know I'm stereotyping a little bit here, but be careful about dismissing African teams in youth tournaments, because at that level, they do tend to be very good. Now, let me ask you, when the U.S. qualified for this Olympics, at that point, they had not yet decided to take part in the Copa America, so it looked like the Olympics was going to be the tournament this summer, and everybody really talked it up as very important in the run-up to 2026. There was debate about whether Greg Berhalter should coach the team, and people were hoping that the U.S. would send a really strong squad. Obviously, you were still at the mercy of clubs releasing players. Mm-hmm. But then once the Copa America entered the picture, the Olympics became the quote-unquote other tournament. And given the way the Copa America went and Berhalter getting fired and all the focus now on who the next senior team coach is going to be, I sense that U.S. fans don't know what to make of the Olympics and how it fits into the overall picture for 2026.
Yeah, so, as you mentioned, in terms of the history when it comes to the Olympics, there is a massive gap after 2008, and really a loss of, well, maybe even multiple generations when it comes to developing and fostering talent. And, you can go back, and I've said this before, you can go back to the early days where a group from the Olympic team was identified and, as I said, fostered and matriculated up to the full national team. to your point, this summer, when the you-know-what hit the fan for the full U.S. men's national team, I think the Olympics became much more of a focus, not necessarily a priority, but the interest level. Because let's be honest, if the U.S. had done incredible things in Copa America, and everyone was, oh my goodness, we're headed, on a bullet train towards 2026, and look at all these players and how well they're playing, and everything's going well, and I don't know, we had beaten Colombia or we had beaten Brazil or something like that, and everybody was happy days are here and we're going forward. This Olympic situation would be an afterthought. But because of that failure, I think people are more interested that potentially somebody could rise above.
And you keep making this point, and I think it's correct. The U.S. nucleus right now feels a bit too entrenched. Like there are 7 or 8 players who, for better or for worse, those are going to be the guys. Even though they just flamed out at the Copa America, they're still going to be the guys in 26. And you're just hoping that because they're still young, that in 2 years' time they'll be better players and with a new coach. And we'll see. It would be nice. For a country that likes to project this image of being a real up-and-comer and a great producer of talent now, for a couple of players to emerge between now and 26 that are not just depth pieces, but are actually starters, impact players, difference makers. And could we see the start of that at this tournament? Also, we're covering the CONCACAF Under-20 Championship right now, which is taking place in Mexico on Thursday. I'm going to be working a U.S.-Costa Rica game on FS1 for that. So I'm going to be viewing these U.S. youth tournaments through that lens of, is there somebody coming up that I think could actually crack that nucleus of the senior team and be a really important piece in 26?
I hope so. And I would argue that if there isn't, then again, it's an indictment on U.S. soccer and the development that we have. And I want to be fair to this process, which was going to be 2 cycles for Greg Berhalter. He came in with a bunch of teenagers, and he grew that group. That group evolved. They grew into young men. They grew into some very, very good players. And I think his plan was to, through the 8 years, and he even said it when he took the second youngest team to the World Cup in 2022, that this was only the start. And all eggs were in that basket, to the detriment maybe of others, and maybe there were blinders on. But I don't necessarily fault him, because you do dance with the ones that brung you. But I think you also recognize that while there might be other talent out there, the more time you spend, the better quote-unquote team you can get. And that's a difficult situation in any international environment for any type of national team where you have very little time together. So I don't know. Ultimately, I don't know if anybody is going to rise up, but I hope it does, because back in the day, it happened a lot more. And to your point, the comfort level of this group is absolutely correct, in that I think that they feel due. I think that they feel that this is their team, this is their position, this is their birthright, if you will. And so whoever comes in, I think, has to nip that in the bud immediately and say, no, you, regardless of how much money you make, regardless of how famous you are, regardless of what you have done in the past, Janet Jackson, okay? You need to have a clean slate and say, if you're that good, then you should be able to prove it going forward here. And I don't care what you did in the past. Yeah, you'll get some leeway here or there. And maybe open it up. But I don't know. I don't know if there's anybody's going to step up and do anything. Anyway, look forward to the games again. Like I said, France, New Zealand, and Guinea. Wednesday, Saturday, and then the 30th is the Guinea game. All right, should we go over to the...
switching gears to the women. And we know on the women's side, the Olympics is a senior tournament. It's much more prestigious. This is the U.S.'s first tournament under Emma Hayes. They're in a group with Zambia, Germany, and Australia. Keep in mind with the women, it's 12 teams, 3 groups of 4, the top 2 in each group, and the 2 best third-place finishers advance, so it's really hard to screw up. The U.S.'s last 2 friendlies leading up to this Olympics, a 1-0 win over Mexico and a 0-0 draw with Costa Rica. In both those games, the front 3 was Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith, and Mal Swanson. In the midfield, you had Lindsey Horan, Sam Coffey, and then in one game, it was Rose Lavelle. The other, it was Corbin Albert. You had Naomi Girma anchoring the back line. So what's your outlook for the U.S. women this summer?
All right. Emma Hayes was hired to transition this team from the past, if you will, albeit a very successful past, and move forward. And I think that she has done, at least on the surface, a good job of laying down the law and getting rid of some of the old players and relying on new, young talent with the understanding that they are going to need some time to develop. I think I think because of the way the United States women's national team has used the Olympics over the years, there is more focus on it. However, I think that Emma Hayes is going to get the benefit of the doubt, and she should, because this is ultimately about still winning the Women's World Cup. In particular, after the complete and utter failure of last summer. So this will be the first time that I think we judge Emma Hayes relative to the results of a tournament. And I think Emma knows this. Well, I hope she knows this. It is about tournaments. And this will be a prelude to the next World Cup, which is the ultimate judgment when it comes to Emma Hayes. I'm excited about this. Again, we mentioned that Catarina Macario got injured and she was taken off, and Lynn Williams came in. And that is a huge loss because of how good she is, Macario, but also the way that she plays up top. And again, there's no Alex Morgan, and there has been a move forward. I don't know ultimately how good or bad this team is, but anytime a U.S. women's national team, and this is a full national team, all right, there's no age limit when it comes to the women's side. Anytime that happens and they step on the field, there is the expectation, because of history, that they win. And they win the games, and they ultimately win the tournament. And you will expect this team to go and to challenge for a gold.
On the injury front, no Sam Kerr for Australia. She tore her ACL in January and hasn't recovered in time. And Germany also lost one of their star players, Lena Oberdorf. So unfortunately, this continues to be a big issue in the women's game of star players missing major tournaments due to injury. And
if you look at the competition that they have, like we said, Zambia, Germany, and Australia, they are this U.S. team, especially in light of what we've seen over the last year and obviously in the summer in Australia and New Zealand, the women's game and women's national teams can and have beaten this U.S. women's national team. I still think that there is plenty of pathway for the U.S. to get out, including beating the likes of Zambia and Australia. But these are none of these three games are slam dunks for this U.S. team.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops twice a week right here on my very own YouTube page. The only way to stay up to date is to hit that subscribe button down below. Size the day, and see you soon.